What is up, guys, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Terminally Drunk, at tonight in episode 217, we're going to be taking a look at the most recent news, both around Overwatch, its competitive scene, and so much more. Before we can do that, though, let me introduce you to my co-host, Ed. And Ed, we took last week off really not a whole lot of happenings there. It would have been a really light week. I also pushed the show back a day this week. And, now we learned a little bit more about the failed experiment that was previously hinted at, which we kind of thought was going to be based on 2CP. And sure enough, that is going to be the case, which is interesting because, even looking back with where we had things initially, on our podcast schedule, we'd already seen hints of strains popping up both on the PTR as well as live that said assault changes. So it's like, okay, well, we were waiting for something to happen. And sure enough, those changes are here. But of course, we'll talk about that here in a bit. How has the past week, or 2 weeks in this case, been for you, my friend?
It's been pretty good. I'm living the quarantine life. Now I have to wear a mask wherever I go.
Mm-hmm.
Which, kind of common nowadays. Uh but good. I'm glad we're doing that. Uh but yeah, playing a little Overwatch, a lot of Hearthstone, a lot of Apex. Yeah, that's really about it. Just doing a lot of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. How's yours been?
It's kind of same old. Been doing a lot of Hearthstone Battlegrounds. Been streaming a lot more. Working on getting Overwatch Recall back off the ground since that was kind of put on the wayside while I focus on some other projects. So that should be back here pretty soon. So looking forward to jumping back in to talk to some of the other different Overwatch content creators out there. Whether it's other podcasters, streamers, people
Mhm.
like that, but that'll probably be coming up within the next week or so. So stay tuned in that regard. So that feed should be active again fairly soon. Not that the feed's still been active. It's just there's nothing been updated or uploaded to it
Yeah,
here.
no new stuff.
Right, but that's gonna change here very very soon. But anyways, let's talk about what has been going on in the competitive scene, and been kind of quiet. With this season of the Overwatch League, obviously we've seen a lot of different player retirements, and the latest one in that regard was the Atlanta Reign DPS Baby Bay. This would basically come like a week after he absolutely crushed it in fantasy, where on OWL by the numbers, we're like, man, Baby Bay, the king's back, and then now he's not. He's not back.
Hmm.
He's no longer there, and he is Valorant bound. In regards to FaZe Clan, which has links to quite a few other Overwatch Pro players as well.
Hmm.
Which for me, obviously, I haven't really been paying too much attention to Valorant because it wasn't necessarily in my cup of tea. But I would be curious to see how a team that revolves primarily around Overwatch players is going to be doing in a game that has attracted primarily the CSGO crowd. But we have seen quite a bit of crossover already with players like Sinatra, who was with Sentinels. I know Zachary recently was signed to another team as well. So there's still a lot of familiar names from the Overwatch scene that we have seen creeping up there. But Atlanta, they made another sign-in, which we might as well talk about right now too, because it is a DPS player. It is someone that they had on their academy roster, back when North America actually had academy teams, especially ones that weren't relegated to open division, cough cough, Boston. But they went out and they signed Saucy. And,
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of people looking at this. In Ramsey's case, he it flew under the radar. But we're still in a situation with Atlanta where when you look at the players that they currently had, even before they went out to pick up, a fourth DPS option, there's still a ton of crossover in regards to the hero pools between the players. So it's been another confusing situation where we don't know if Saucy's actually going to see any playtime, or if this is more of a move where, maybe this is more of like a scrim partner type situation. Maybe like he'll get paired with Sharp, because Sharp has really been the one to kind of get like the raw end of the deal in this situation where he hasn't really been seeing much
Hmm.
play this season.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. It would be. I mean, I would think so, but I don't know. It's you never know what's going to actually happen with them. As odd as that sounds, they're just a team where you have no idea if they're going to be. I don't know, going all new DPS, or if you know Saucy is going to be in, if Erster's going to be in, if Edison's going to be in, if for some reason Hawk is on DPS. I don't know, but they're just odd like this. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a lot of them and no Erster.
That would be quite spicy. And it's what's funny about this is in our show notes. I did this after I streamed, and I put ATL Rain get spicy, and this was after I talked to Kinder. So clearly, we had just been talking about dropping spicy on stream. So I just thought
Mm-hmm.
that was funny. I was like, wait a minute, I know that's not his name.
Yeah. No.
So that happened.
Yeah. I was reading, I'm like, have I been saying it wrong the whole time and it's spicy, not saucy? And I'm like, no, it's saucy. Spider screw Totem screwed up there.
It's not 100% saucy. But anyways, that's not the only new signing that we saw throughout the Overwatch League here recently, because the San Francisco Shock also went out and signed one of the former third Impact DPS players, Taiyo, who's actually already come in and made his debut. This is the first Japanese player to join the Overwatch League. And that's probably a familiar name to people who have been fans of the Overwatch World Cup. Unfortunately, like, Japan never had like the longest runs, but he had always kind of stood out on the Genji role even back then. And he had been like really the most well-known name in Japan in regards to the Overwatch scene. Now, what was interesting about the timing of this is, this was off the heels of Super Genji, right? Where, everyone had been talking about, the stats from Super, Super, haven't played every single role at this point. And a lot of people were kind of like, well, do we actually need it? And then you had the other side of the coin who are just like, really, Shock? You're gonna add even more depth to that roster when we have seen situations where Moth hasn't even been playing a lot of the time,
Nope.
depending on which support players are in play. So it's been curious to see, like, you have the scrims that have been going on to see who the Genji player is on the team. They end up going with the tank player, and now they go out and they pick up Taiyo, who is the new Genji player. So it's just like it's one piece after the other, and the Shock have really started to like regain that composure that we saw from them throughout that championship winning season. So another good pickup from them, and it's looking like they haven't really lost a step here either.
No, it doesn't look like that at all. Like, you know, take a look at who the all-star DPS were for them last year. You were looking at Sinatra and Rascal, and now when we like, it's just like they have a plethora of ungodly amount of uh like DPS and talent on this team that they can just be like, okay, we're basically putting a different two out every week. Let's just go with that. And it's all working out for them. Like Teo, just came in and did very well. I don't know if we're gonna see him from here on out, but uh, yeah, that was really good. Like really good play by him. But they haven't dropped. I mean, they have the best three support players, like the best support trio in the league.
Mhm.
I guess the only thing maybe they could use is some more stability at tank. Maybe? Like, and I'm nitpicking at this point. Like, you have because you have Super
Hmm.
and um
Smurf.
Smurf, and like they both are very good at their specific tank roles. If you could find one tank who is as good at them on both their roles, that's really all I'm seeing here as like a weakness.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's they're looking scary.
Yeah, and I definitely tuned in for his debut just because
Mhm.
with Tayo, he has this meme about him as a player. And if you ever watch him stream, you probably have seen how ridiculous his crosshair settings are.
Mhm.
It's gotten to the point where they even focus on it during the Overwatch League broadcast. And his former teammates of Third Impact, they went out and, they have a new team now, which they called Comically Large Crosshair. So the meme is living on through his, former teammates here, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But, like, it was just one of those cases where when you talk about the Overwatch League, you don't really expect to see something like that ridiculous. Because normally, like when you get like that first person view, it's usually okay, someone has a really high sensitivity, and then, they spin the wheel, and then, the camera just goes all stir crazy. But to see the giant crosshair, like on
Mhm.
the actual stream broadcast was absolutely hilarious. But, good for his teams to give him a little bit of a nod, and they even like mentioned it on the stream as well for the Overwatch League broadcast about the new contenders roster. So that has to be a feels good man, and probably gave him a pretty good laugh on that front as well.
Yeah, as long as they do well.
Well,
'Cause it
all I'm seeing is a lot of people do not like the new contenders format that they had this month, because it's like double elimination, I think, is what they're running, and I don't know, I see a lot of negativity on my social media, but I haven't really tuned into any of the games as of yet. But
I've legit lost I've lost all interest in tier 2 because it's so ass backwards at this point that it's been changed so many times.
mhm.
It's been the ball's been dropped over and over again by Overwatch that I've lost all interest in tier 2
Yeah,
uh
but like,
for that.
if you want to learn more about tier 2 and tier 2 coverage, be sure to check out our friends over at Blackwatch Report, which is part of High Noon Productions.
Nice plug.
Since,
Well done.
they're one of the only ones covering it.
And God bless them for it.
They live and die on that hill.
Yes. So we'll see what the Shock 2 this week, because they're down someone
They are.
for being a dumbass.
Yeah, we actually got a little bit of a follow up to this since we talked about it on OWL by the numbers. So one of their support players, Violet, has been fined and suspended one game for toxic behavior that he had been showing on his Twitch stream. This is not like a one-time occurrence. This is something that's happened a few times. I know he was getting into some spats with PvPX a couple different times. He's also been getting into spats with some other streamers or, community members that probably aren't like as like notable in regard to like name recognition, but, we've seen Violet since then. He posted like a twit longer trying to like tell his side of the story, and I'll be honest, Ed, when I read this, I was just like, dude, just no. Just no. Like, it comes across as him just being super defensive.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's just like, oh, well, this is the reason why I did that. But, basically it just boils down to him using, some slurs on stream that he shouldn't be using. And, yeah, this isn't the first instance that we've seen from him or another Overwatch League player.
Mm-hmm.
But, the suspensions have been few and far between. But at the end of the day, you look at their starting roster, or even like their schedule for this week. It is one game, and it's against the Houston Outlaws. So it's not like the suspension here is going to have the biggest impact on the
No.
winnability of the match. I think it's pretty much a given at this point. It does mean that we have the potential return of Moth to the starting lineup should we not revert to using Super on Zenyatta like in Season 1. But, like, part of me is just hoping, just for the meme's sake, that that is what is going to happen. But, you know, I'm honestly surprised that there has not been more fines and suspensions, knowing just the amount of like tension and uneasiness there's been, obviously, with everything going on around us. You know, a lot of people uh get a little fed up about being stuck inside more times than not, obviously.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised there haven't been more. But I think the teams were basically came out and were like, just keep a freaking lid on it.
Yeah.
Like, just don't even get, whether you're for or against it, just don't say a thing. And leave it at that. And players have stuck to that, I think. I haven't heard anything.
Mhm.
But other than like, oh, wear a mask, which is not like, oh my God, suspend them. But you know, like criticizing people for what they're doing, stuff like that. I haven't heard much of that. But I mean, is it a suspension for one game? Yes. Is it a slap on the wrist? If that, like, you're suspended for one match against the Houston Outlaws, and the team is just as good without him in there than with him in there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I don't foresee like the shock seed-in for the Countdown Cup really fluctuating at all. In this case, like even if they do somehow find a way to lose against the Outlaws, I don't think anyone's gonna detract away from them as a team overall.
mm-mm.
But anyways, let's talk about Overwatch and what's happening in games. So actually, a little bit of stuff has happened since our last show. I am gonna talk Workshop here in a few minutes, just because I like the specific game mode that was made, and
Okay.
it could fit well with Overwatch 2, given we know that the maps are gonna be a lot bigger. It doesn't really work so well right now though, and I'll get to that in a bit. But anyways, I've seen a lot of Reinhardt players out there talking about his charge ability, specifically when it comes to, you know, landing the pin and just how the pin mechanic works in the game. And it's kind of been brought up that there's a little bit of a trick to guarantee that you have an accurate charge. So hopefully this is going to be able to help some players out there. If they're wondering like why some particular players are getting like booped away from them as opposed to getting knocked into a wall. So the ability has had a little bit of inconsistencies here. You know, sometimes it will knock an enemy back, while at other times, you know, you basically like scoop them up, and you know, you end up hitting them. But there's this thing called like the cradle, basically. So there were the streamers Flats and SVB, who were the players kind of like behind this. And basically, they dubbed this the Flats Cradle. So basically, when Reinhardt is pinning someone, you see his body start to contort to a very like unique shape, and if you're able to get an enemy within that cradle, the charge is going to connect, and you're going to, you know, pin that enemy player up against a wall. So, what's interesting about this is that it, like with Flat's theory, you know, it should suck you in as long as, you know, they're in the cradle where he is pinning. Outside of that, you know, it's like, it's based on, like, the, like, on the left side, it sucks because of the cradle, but, like, on the other side, it, like, boops the player away. So it's all about, like, the shoulder positioning, really, at this point. So it's obviously it's much easier to see this via, like, a GIF or, you know, the stream summary. But basically, the best thing to think about is, you know, on the right side, you're going to knock them away, and they're just going to, like, deflect right off of you. You want to get them kind of like in that middle spot, right in the cradle, and then you should land the actual pin on them. So you always want to be towards the left. That's the beneficial side. Anything to the right, you're just gonna nudge them.
Mm-hmm. So aim for the left of them, not for the right of them. Gotcha.
Absolutely. So definitely something to note, and hopefully, maybe people can improve their accuracy on that front. But definitely go test it out in like the train-in bot room.
Mm-hmm.
That's the easiest way to do it. Now, outside of that, there was a new workshop mode that I haven't tested as of yet, but this is something that has been in a lot of other FPS games. Kind of like heralding back to like Battlefield, or I think Destiny might actually have Conquest, if I'm not mistaken, in Destiny 2 with like
Yeah,
control.
they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So someone did make Conquest as a workshop mode, and for those that aren't familiar with that particular like PvP type mode, it's basically a King of the Hill type setup, except there are 3 different points. So obviously you're trying to control as many as you can. The more points that you hold, the more points you end up accruing up to whatever limit at this point. Now, right now, looking at the maps that they have playable, you have maps like Blizzard World. They have like each point for Ilios, Legion Tower, as well as Oasis. So primarily, keeping it as a control-focused map, which I'm a little surprised that Blizzard World is on the supported maps for this one. I don't know if it's just due to the map size. Maybe there's a little bit more wiggle room
Yeah.
with that one in particular.
It could also be something with the spawn, because you have to have different spawn points.
Mhm.
So you have to create a third spawn point for this, and it might work out that way as well.
Yeah, so just looking at this, so you're fighting over these 3 zones. It's 100 points to get the win. So what's interesting about this is, let's say a team is out there and they capture every point. It triggers what they call a power play. So at that point, all the zones are locked, and it gives the team that has the advantage opportunities to chase down kills. Also, kind of interesting because you don't really get to see that all that much. But when you look at the map design in the game right now, there hasn't been a lot of maps that have been like that large. I think Blizzard World is probably the biggest map that we have seen. But we know with the Overwatch 2 map design, like we've seen like with the demos and everything, at least at BlizzCon, that they said they're probably going to be like twice as big as what we're currently getting. We know we're going to get a new game mode, which hopefully we'll hear more about Overwatch 2, since we kind of are going to be in that lull period for a little bit. It's been kind of quiet on that front. But the biggest drawback to Conquest in its current form is just the fact that the map sizes do not pan out. There's just not enough room to have 3 different points, which is why we have things like Assault. And a lot of people, I don't know if you've heard this, Ed, people do not like 2CP.
No, they do not.
So maybe Conquest is something to explore with Overwatch 2?
I don't know about that. I would not like it for. It's because like with Overwatch, it's a team-based game where you have the Holy Trinity: tank, damage, support. Now it's okay. Now do you split that up? Like it would have to be no limits.
Mm-hmm.
Not no limits, but no two tanks, 2 DPS, 2 supports. No 2-2-2.
Right.
That would be the only way it would work. I don't think you can pull this off with a 2-2-2.
Well,
and they would have to make maps specifically for this mode, which they can do, because you have to also like if they capture a point, then you have to spawn somewhere else, and so on and so forth. And it could be done, but I think it would be a bit iffy for me.
Well, I guess if they just kept it under the control type of settings, then it wouldn't be that much of an issue. But luckily in game, there are ways that we are able to test things out via the workshop mode. So even if this is something to hit experimental as like another way of playing, I'd be curious to test it out. But it's been a while since we've actually heard about some new workshop modes, or at least popular enough ones to warrant any sort of discussion. And I everyone has been tearing their hair out with 2CP for such a long time, so I thought it was worth mentioning. So I'll definitely have the import code for this, and maybe during one of the game nights we can check it out and try things out for ourselves. But anyways, let's talk about experiments that have been going on. And, we kind of missed a big one since we took this past week off. And I'm going to preface this by saying I did not actually get to play the experimental mode for this. But I did see the knee-jerk reaction from the community. And it's just like, guys, like, sit down, It's called experimental for a reason. They basically they basically gave like Moira's Fate ability a cleanse. And
immunity.
And immunity for like allies. Which was pretty short. But everyone was freaking out because they're like, "Oh god, we do not want to see this on live." But like, for the longest time, Ed, they've been talking about how they want something with Moira's kit to feel more rewarding or more skill-based. So on that note, like, when I saw this pop up on Experimental, I was like, okay, like, this is what Experimental should be used for. It's a tweak to a mechanic that is already in-game. They're gonna rework how it actually is used within the game. It does make it a little bit more skill-based. It does provide counterplay. But of course, everyone just looks at it like, oh, well, they're not making any changes to the cooldown, so then they're just going to keep spamming this, and then, it's just too much. And, I understand that. But I like the idea actually fit in the whole point of the experimental mode. But the community outcry was so loud, like, it just drowned any sort of feedback out, where they're just like, nope, that's bad, we can't have that.
Okay, so I did play this, and it was broken. It was legit broken. It could have not been broken if they would have tweaked it a little, but I think I want to say, like, a lot of people on Reddit and in the community were like, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Oh my god, the sky is falling. Because the simple fact of, when's the last time something like went to experimental and then just didn't go through at all? Not changed, just didn't go through at all. I can't remember that. So, like, if you have like a 98% chance, a history of this, what goes into experimental mode going through to the game, yeah, that would be a cause for panic. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just losing my mind.
I don't think so. I think the biggest thing, though, is if you wanted something to feel that powerful, and this was something that they were seriously considering to use within the game, that it should be tweaked to being an ultimate rather than just one of the normal base abilities. Because, like, I do like the idea of Fade, or just any use of a way to dispel, like, the Ana, anti-nade, which is very frustrating. But, like, something like that can't be on a cooldown that's like 8 to 12 seconds. You can't just have it match whatever the grenade cooldown is going to be, especially when it does give immunity. And, it would get you out of a lot of sticky situations. You know, you could use it to counterplay, you know, both Zarya as well as Sigma when it comes to their ultimates. But all in all, like, you know, it is what it is. The people are gonna complain. And you know, there's not much we can do to change that. But you know, there were also the Genshi changes that were on experimental with that as well. You know, they were patching those through on July 28th. But I guess they've been having some issues with that particular patch. The thing I linked on there isn't actually the link. Um, but they ended up like rolling back some of the tweaks that they made, and I want to say they were looking at either the damage or like the recovery rate with this alternate fire.
Okay.
And all that stuff should have got patched through, I believe, today, if I'm not mistaken. What's today? 30th? Yeah. So that stuff is on live today with the next thing we're going to be talking about with Assault maps. So the Genji nerfs that were live that got rolled back should be through at this point. So they looked at his Shuriken. So the damage was decreased from 30 to 28. And then the secondary fire recovery was increased from 0.65 to 0.75. So trying to bring Genji down a little bit, which is definitely needed, because as we've talked about on the show, you know, we did see the immediate impact that Genji had. You know, he was not seen really for a very long time. They made some changes to his shurikens. They had a really nice quality of life change with this deflect and being able to manually cancel it. And then all of a sudden, Genji was in just about every single competitive game, you know, especially in the higher ends of competitive play and all the way up to the Overwatch League, to the point where he was the most picked hero in the game altogether. And, you know, his win rate was up there as well in like that, you know, 54, 56% range, which was also, you know, topping the charts at that point in time too. So, you know, we'll see if this is going to be the sweet spot. You know, it's good to see that, okay, like, you know, we overtuned it a little bit. You know, we're going to scale it back. And, you know, we'll see where the chips fall at this point. Because for a while, when you compared Genji to some of the other flank DPS characters within Overwatch, he was definitely the odd man out where he wasn't able to keep pace with Tracer. Echo honestly just offered more in regards to the toolkit. Not necessarily like, by and large, better DPS in the long run, but the amount of things that you can do with her ultimate really brought more to the table than what you could get out of a Dragon Blade.
Yeah, it needed to be tweaked down a little. You know, and it doesn't affect where we're at. This is mainly a high end change, which I wholeheartedly think is the best way to balance a game, is balance from the top down, not from the bottom up. But yeah, no, like when you're still seeing Genji in a double shield meta, something's wrong there. Like, and Brig, double shields and Brig, and Genji still meta. No, no, just hard pass. So yeah, this one I think was needed, and I mean, I don't think there's a lot. Genji mains are pissed, but I'm not hearing much flack about this.
Absolutely. So good fine tuning on that end. But the bigger thing with today's patch is the new experiment card, which we aforementioned revolves around a failed experiment in the past with the Assault game mode. So some interesting stuff here. So what is the point of this experimental card with Assault? Well, you know, this has been something that they've been talking about a lot internally. We have seen them try a few different things over the years to try to address some of the issues with the game mode. I would say in that regard, it's to varying degrees of success, because a lot of people still do not like it. And, you know, while most of the changes that they have made did make it through to the live game, there was another iteration that they wanted to take a look back at. So this is their way to allow everyone to, you know, give additional feedback on that. So the things that they're looking to address here are the snowball potential. So, if point A gets captured quickly, the attacking team tends to be just in a better situation to quickly capture the second point. Because usually they end up having the higher ultimate charge
Mhm.
after, just powering through A, and that carries over to an advantage for them to just take B, where there are situations where you do see, 4.5, 5.5 minute plus attack time banks in that
Mhm.
case. And, a lot of that also has to do with the fact that, on the defensive side, if you are the one being snowballed, it's really hard to recover since you are at that alt disadvantage. So you're not really equipped to like handle even the point B defense at that point either. The other part of that was also like just having short matches and blowout matches, which also does factor in from the snowballing, where we probably see it a little bit more in a quick play, where these matches end up ending in like 2 or 3 minutes at times, and it never really feels great if you're on
No.
the losing end of it. And you don't really see that in some of the other game modes that have been going on. So, some of the other mechanics really like just force a more balanced pace to the matches. So here's where things get interesting, and it's how they're trying to change or how they look to change just the game mode flow. So and I have to say, like, this really, I'm anxious to test this out only to see how different it feels. But it is a failed experiment, so there's a caveat to that, and I know that's something that you're gonna want to bring up.
Uh yes. I mean, the caveat to this is they've already stated that they're not going to be bringing this mode into the game.
Right.
So, all right. So why are you giving this to us? Like, what's the point? Like, are you in that much of like a content drought before Overwatch 2 that you're just throwing whatever at us at this point? Because I mean, the what they brought into the game is not anything I could ever see them in a million years actually putting into the game. Like, at that point, they just need to delete all 2CP maps
Mm-hmm.
if they're going to introduce this. Like, that's plain and simple. That's what they'd have to do.
Yeah, I think for me, I appreciate getting more of an insight on kind of like the philosophy that they went about changing a particular game mode. But at the same time, we have to think if we are going to see any specific game mode changes, it wouldn't happen now. It would happen with the launch of the sequel or the expansion, whenever that is going to happen. So it feels like it's weird timing. So for them to just be like, guys, like nothing's actually changing, it really kind of like defeats the purpose of it. But I still want to talk about the rework that they have for the experimental card for the week. So basically, the game mode has been changed into a shorter set of rounds where after each point capture, the round is going to end and the teams switch sides. So you'll have, Team 1 attempting to take point A, and then if they succeed or they fail, then Team 2 will attempt to capture that same point. So if you get a situation where both teams end up capturing point A, then we'll move to a point B attack. And, they'll kind of just repeat the process there with both teams getting the opportunity to attack and defend. And then, whoever ends up succeeding in capturing more points ends up winning the game. So they basically have a 6-minute timer on the clock for each team. And there is not any, like, time bank revolved around this. So you don't get any extra time added to your clock should you capture a point. And they also like shortened the like setup time in regards to the rounds after you have like a successful point A and point B attack. So there's more to it looking at this. Looks like when a team defends point A for the second time and subsequent times, they will spawn in a new spawn room just off the point, which will deactivate when the round starts. And that is to just reduce the setup time as much as possible. So they really want to just get you in and out in that case. And then the respawn times for both attack and defense has been changed. Most notably, the defenders take longer to spawn when defending the second point. So, I'm very conflicted with this. Outside of just the fact that we know it's not getting patched through to live. I like the idea of saying, okay, we're just going to completely eliminate the time bank. Because there have been instances in the past where, regardless of if it was Assault or not, we have seen cases where maps have gone to like a 7-8 score. It's not super common on Assault. Typically, it might be like a 5-4, and that's even on the high end. But to just constantly, like, switch, to me, seems really weird. Like, I don't know if they're just trying to make this approach where, okay, we just don't want any sort of advantage for the attackers. So everyone is starting like on an equal footing. So if, one side gets completely blown out, then, they're not really hindered by that, where they're not going to get snowballed into point B because they're not going to have that momentum to carry over. So on that end, like, I like the approach that they took. But I want to see, like, in-game, just how quickly the setup time is in between the rounds, because that will really determine whether or not this is a way to actually speed up the game mode, or if it's still going to be about the same as what it currently is on live servers.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what it's at. I don't know if it'll be all that much. Just for the simple fact of, God, I don't even know. Like, I don't even want to make speculations. I haven't tried it out yet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is so absurd. Just absurd. It's like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just an absurd thing that I just don't get.
Yeah,
Personally,
if they had thought about doing this, I wonder why they wouldn't just think about randomizing the attack order in regards to like what point you're going towards.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would be another option that they could have used. That way, it's another way to kind of like change up the overall game flow on top of what they had already tried to introduce in this case. But right now, like, this is going to hold us over probably a week, I would imagine. I'm assuming, Summer Games will probably be here next week, because that's usually in early August. So
I do know that Overwatch, Jeff and the Overwatch team did a Reddit AMA
they
today.
did. I was waiting on answers because when I looked earlier, there weren't any posted on the Reddit.
Exactly. So was I. So that's something we'll probably talk about next week, and we'll probably get some information out of that. I think the first question asked I saw on Reddit was, "When are the Summer Games coming?" Like, that's your first question?
Probably next week.
Really? First question. Not like, hey, when's Overwatch 2 coming? Can we get some Overwatch 2 news? No, it's, when can I play the worst freaking game mode ever in Lucio Ball?
That's okay, Ed. You're going to have a new arena to play in with Lucio Ball when it makes its return. Because I know that's going to get you back in there.
Hard pass.
Yeah, probably next week is when we'll see it. Any thoughts in mind in regards to any skins you would like to see incorporated with the event, or who you'd like to see get like a legendary skin?
I think the new heroes need to get some legendary skins in there. They just don't have the plethora.
Mm-hmm.
As always, just don't give one to Mercy. She has enough. Same with Tracer.
Mm-hmm.
They have plenty. Yeah, like you want to get Sigma one, maybe Orisa could use another one. Baptiste definitely could use one. Ashe, I want to say Ashe could use one, but she's got the best skin in the game. So it's like, yeah, she'll probably get one, but how do you not use, Little Red Riding Ashe?
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. They'll probably
Yeah.
they'll probably still give it to Mercy, Tracer, and Winston.
Just to conflict you further and agitate you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the bittersweet thing about the events is, with summer games especially, there's just so much more that they could do in regards to like game modes, so like kind of tie into the Olympics, which we know we're not gonna get. Like, imagine a situation where we do have like races with like Wrecking Ball, Lucio, or Tracer, or like a Zenyatta shot put where they do some sort of like button mashing and whoever can like launch his orb the farthest. There's different things that you could try to like pull into the event
Mm-hmm.
to make it stand out, to change things up a little bit, so it's not always just Lucio Ball in this case. But unfortunately, that's out of the cards, because they don't want to make any additional changes to the modes that they kind of already have put in place for the event. So I'm hoping, like during the AMA, someone asked about whether or not we could see new stuff incorporated to the events with Overwatch 2, because that's definitely something that I feel like is needing to happen at this point.
Yeah.
Because we're definitely at the point for a while now where the events are only there for cosmetics.
Yes.
We're not seeing like any new story outside of like the new like mission archives, but like to that extent, like that's been it. So I don't know. It's bittersweet, but we'll definitely be talking more about summer games, giving our thoughts on all the cosmetics and unlockables and whatever other things are kind of tied into the events whenever that
Mm-hmm.
should drop. But I would imagine it would have to be on Tuesday, just knowing that we are at the end of July now.
In theory, it will. Just
We'll give it two weeks at the most, I would say.
2 weeks at the most. All right, I'm good with that.
That seems like a safe guess at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like that's pretty much been it in the land of Overwatch these past few weeks. Obviously, on the esports side, this is the last week of games leading up to the Countdown Cup. So, all of
Mm-hmm.
the seeding will be determined this weekend. Games start tomorrow, which would be Friday. On the NA side, you will have an additional game on Sunday between the 12th seed and a 13th seed in order to determine who advances to the NA bracket. So, we'll have all the draws on that end. But yeah, that's basically it. I can't think of anything else that is worth mentioning outside of like maybe the Overwatch League MVP candidates being released at some point next weekend.
Yeah.
So something to look forward to later down the road. But I think that should do it for us here tonight. So another shorter episode, which is to be expected.
Mm-hmm. And considering we held off last week because there was lack of it, so we just carried over all the news from last week to this week and still had a shorter episode. That is indicative of where it's slow. Outside of the Overwatch League, it is slow.
Yeah, so maybe maybe we should reach out to people, try to get them on. Let's do some community discussions or something. Try to
Something.
well, we'll figure something out just so we could try to get back to, I'm not gonna say normal recording times, but
Yeah, I don't know. Outside of special episodes, I don't know if we'll ever get back to 2+ hours.
yeah.
Well, because we're not doing we're not really breaking down the Overwatch League as well.
As much, yeah.
Yeah.
That's because we have a show for that. That airs on Mondays, which you guys should check out. But anyways, that will do it for us here tonight on Heroes Never Die. If you guys want to help us out, please do us a favor and head on over to iTunes. Leave and write us a review. Let us know how we're doing, if there is anything in particular you would like to see us talk about, whether it is a segment idea, discussion topic, really anything. We are an open book, so please reach out to us on that front. And of course, we're always looking for ways to improve the listening experience for you. If you'd like to support our podcast and the network that it is on, you can consider pledging to our Patreon page, where we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. And that is at patreon.com/OWL network. where you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons, Daniel, Owl, Kesha, and 044 in helping our network grow. And just as a reminder, Overwatch Recall should be back here fairly shortly. I am working on a website specifically for Recall for the podcast directory, which I will have to go through and update because it's been like I think 3 months at this point. But we'll see whether or not I decide to like move all of our stuff over to the new site or just keep the one we are currently using. But either way, Recall has a dedicated site that we'll be using moving forward whenever we do make a return here within the next couple of weeks. But Ed, please let our listeners know how they can go ahead and contact our show.
All right. So you can reach us through email over at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. We are on Twitter, and that's at hndoverwatch. We do have a website you can go to. That's owlnshow.com. We do have a YouTube, and that's youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We do have a Discord, and that's discord.me/OWLNshow. We are streaming live on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLNshow. We are Twitch affiliate, so help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network does stream pretty regularly. So on Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific, we have the Overwatch League Network. On Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, we have OWL by the Numbers. On Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific is usually Heroes Never Die. Something came up this week. And then Thursdays, we have Tavern Tales, a Hearthstone Battlegrounds at 5 p.m. Pacific. But that's streamed over at twitch.tv/TavernTalesHS. You can contact me personally on Twitter, and that's at Edinar83. And I'm on Twitch at twitch.tv/Edinar. Totem, where can they find you at?
Well, I'm over on Twitter, basically trolling and stirring a pot between the friendly rivalry of Omnicleb and High Noon, like I did during their 200th episode, at Tumbly Drunk. And I do stream Monday, Wednesday, Thursdays, typically at 7 p.m. Pacific time at twitch.tv/Tumbly Drunk. But tonight we got Tavern Tales. We got a new patch drop today. Like, what? Like on our podcast today? Like that's fantastic, and we actually got to test out some of the new stuff, which is also a plus. Because otherwise we would have been like, I guess we're holding off again. But that's not happening. We'll be recording here shortly. But anyways, guys, thank you again for joining us tonight on Heroes Never Die. Don't forget to set your fantasy lineups if you are playing Fantasy Overwatch League with the game starting on Friday. And of course, get all the latest with the Overwatch League on Monday with Overwatch League Network. And we'll see you guys back next week with hopefully some Summer Games news. Or actual news. Just something. Who knows? Good night.
Peace out.